Hello there, thrill seekers. Let's talk some about koans and the different ways they're used. We'll do that after 14 seconds of the bass line from Black Diamond by Kiss. Hit it! Alright, there you go. I did the intro to Black Diamond a couple videos ago, or maybe last video? I don't remember. Some video I did. So that's the bass line, which I always liked. Okay, I got a question, and since before your sun burned hot in the sky and before your race was born, I have awaited a question, and if you want to send me a question about Zen, or whatever else you want to send me a question about, you can write to me at bw@hardcorezen.info. That is bw@hardcorezen.info. And I will read your question and I will respond to you by email, and maybe I'll even make a video about it. So there you go. That's how you do it. So I got this two questions recently about koans. And I looked through my old videos and I found out that 3 years ago I had done a video answering basically the same question about koans. But, I don't think everybody watches every video, and I think some people forget that they watched a video 3 years ago, or they never watched that one, or whatever, so I'm going to do it again. So, koans. Well, how do we define koans? Okay, the dictionary definition from some online dictionary that I found defines koans as a paradoxical anecdote or riddle used in Zen Buddhism to demonstrate the inadequacy of logical reasoning and to provoke enlightenment. Okay, so for those of you who dispute that definition, go talk to the people that I don't remember which online dictionary I got that from, so you can go and look for it and dispute it with them. But this is the common understanding of what koans are. There's the weird questions like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? That's always my favorite answer. Or the one I'm going to bring up about the cypress tree in the garden, which I'll talk to you about later. But they're weird little phrases that are used in the Rinzai sect they concentrate on them, and then they are supposed to bring their answer to the koan to their teacher in a little ritualized meeting called sanzen. And mostly the teacher will tell them they're wrong about the answer to the koan, and then they have to go back and concentrate on it again. If you want to know more about koans in the Rinzai tradition, probably you'd be better off to ask Shozan Jack Haubner, my friend who does the video channel Zen Confidential, and he can answer that. And maybe I'll send him this video and say, if you want to answer how it's used in the Soto, the Rinzai tradition, you can talk about that. So in that previous video that I did about koans and the differences between the Rinzai and the Soto style, I took the same koan from two different books, this is my teacher's translation of Shinji Shobo Genzo, which are 301 koan stories, translated by Guro Nishijima with Mike Lutchford and Jeremy Pearson. And the same material was treated in this book called True Dharma I, Zen Master Dogen's 300 Koans. I guess they didn't get the one extra one. Translated by Kazuaki Tanahashi and Daido Lori, and then commentary by Daido Lori. So it's basically Daido Lori's book, the late Daido Lori, who, he ran a Zen monastery in the East Coast somewhere. Very famous Zen teacher, very powerful guy in the scene, but now unfortunately passed away. And in that other video, I took the two koans and I used this as an example of the Soto way of doing things, and this is the example of the Rinzai way of doing things. Now, Daido Lori, I think, considered himself a Soto Zen teacher, but he trained in the Rinzai Zen style as well, and he tended to teach koans in the Rinzai Zen style. So let's just look at one, and this is a fairly famous koan that you hear a lot of times. In fact, there's a joke based on it that I'll tell you after I read the koan. Anyway, a monk asked Master Joshu, what was Master Bodhidharma's intention in coming from India in the West to China? Master Joshu says, cedar trees in the garden. The monk said, "Master, don't teach me with objective things." Master Joshu said, "I am not teaching you with objective things." The monk said, "What was Master Bodhidharma's intention in coming from India to China?" Master Joshu said, "Cedar trees in the garden." And this is the joke that is based on that. It goes something like, how many monks or how many Zen Buddhist monks does it take to screw in a light bulb? The cedar tree in the garden. I used that in one of my books somewhere. And here is Nishijima Roshi's commentary, and it's kind of typical of how these are commented upon in the Soto tradition. So he says, "The monk refused to accept cedar trees in the garden as an expression of the essence of Buddhism because he took it as just an expression of an objective situation. However, according to Master Joshu, cedar trees in the garden was not just an expression of objective facts, but reality itself. The objective and subjective worlds are just different viewpoints of one reality. Bodhidharma's going to China was just his acting in accordance with the real situation at every moment, at this moment, probably, I would probably put it, or at the moment that he was in. His intention was just to follow reality at every moment." Well, that explains it. "The real situation at the temple of Master Joshu was that there were cedar trees in the garden. Thus, this expression and Master Bodhidharma's action are the same. Master Dogen discusses this story in detail in Shobogenzo Hakujushi, the cedar tree." So Dogen devotes an entire chapter of Shobogenzo in volume 2 of the Nishijima Cross edition to a long discussion, a long, very poetic, kind of hard to follow discussion, which basically says the same thing as Nishijima Roshi says, but in much more flowery language. And he devotes a whole chapter to that. So basically that's the way the koans are treated in the Soto tradition. We use them as subjects to talk about. So most of, I don't know, maybe not most of, a lot of Master Dogen's Shobogenzo is his commentary on various koans. One of the best ones, one of the ones is my favorite, it occurs in book 4 of the Nishijima Cross version, where he talks about Hyakujo's fox. And I've talked about Hyakujo's fox a lot on this video channel. It's one of my favorite koans, one of the first ones I was ever exposed to. And he devotes 2 chapters to long discussions about this. So the koans aren't assigned in the way that they do in the Rinzai sect, where they give you an assigned koan, and sometimes they would say what is the Bodhidharma's intention in coming to China from India, and you're supposed to answer that. Now, here is, as I said, Daido Lori's commentary on the same koan. So the translation is slightly different because they make it a cypress tree instead of a cedar tree, but basically it's the same thing. A monk asked Zhao Zhao, so they like to use the Chinese pronunciation of his name. Joshu is the Japanese pronunciation of the same master's name. "What is the meaning of the ancestor Bodhidharma's coming from India?" Zhao Zhao said, "The cypress tree in the garden." The monastic says, "Please don't teach me using an object." Zhao Zhao said, "I'm not showing an object to you." The monastic said, "What is the meaning of the ancestors coming from India?" Zhao Zhao said, "The cypress tree in the garden." So this is how Daido Lori comments on it. "Zhao Zhao's Zen cuts off the myriad streams and stuns the mind. There is no place to take hold of it. This cypress tree is not to be found in the world of phenomena, nor can it be found in the realm of emptiness. Then where shall we search for it? Putting aside the cypress tree, I ask you, what is the meaning of the ancestors coming from India? If you can clearly see into the monastic's question, you will see through Zhao Zhao's response. If you think there is any meaning whatsoever, then you won't be able to save even yourself. If you say there is no meaning, you are still 100 miles from the truth. What will you say?" And then he adds a capping verse, which is a very Rinzai style thing to do. And it is, "Nothing whatsoever to say, the pine trees singing in the spring's warm breeze. The 10,000 hymns of forest and wind fill the river valley." Okay, I don't know about you, but I find Master Nishijima's commentary much more comprehensible than Daido Lori's. Daido Lori seems to want to be poetic. He seems to be writing in a style that sounds like when you translate something from ancient Chinese into English, he's sort of aping that style, like imitating that style. And it just leaves me cold. I kind of understand where he's going. I kind of understand trying to leave things a little bit more open than Nishijima Roshi does, where he kind of just explains it in a very straightforward way. But I also find it baffling. Now, if you want to get really weird, this is another book that, this one's out of print, but it's not that hard to find. It is The Sound of One Hand, and it is basically, 281 Zen koans with answers. So these are supposed to be the typical answers you would get in a Rinzai monastery if you were working with that koan. So I'm going to read this to you. Now, I've been told by somebody, actually my first teacher, Tim, who worked with Rinzai koans, that if you really want to do the Rinzai koan study, you should not read this book, because it gives you the wrong thing. Okay. And here's how they put it. A monk asked Master Joshu, "What is the meaning of our founder coming from the west?" i.e. the meaning of Zen. Joshu said, "The oak tree in the front garden." So they keep making a different kind of tree. A cedar, cypress, and oak. The monk said, "Master, please do not show people the place your heart has roamed to." So that's a completely different line. Joshu said, "I will not." The monk said, "What is the meaning of our founder coming from the west?" Joshu said, "The oak tree in the garden." Now they add a little bit more. After Master Hogen asked Master Kakuteshi, Joshu's disciple, "I have heard that Joshu said something about an oak tree, didn't he?" Kakuteshi said, "My deceased master has never said that. Do not slander him." Hogen said, "The real offspring of a lion can roar like a lion." I don't know what that means, so don't ask me. Anyway, they say that the answer you should give if you're studying Rinzai Zen is the pupil folds his arms, stands up, and says, "Oak tree," like I'm an oak tree. And then they have a little poem here after it. I guess it's a poem. "The pine trees in the cold are of the same color, yet the span of 1,000 years has lapsed." Okay. Or pine trees will be green for 1,000 years, or withered trees flourish in the winter months. And they say a popular saying is, "The good luck young pine, its branches flourish wide and far, its leaves grow thick and green, as against do not slander the deceased master." Yeah, and there's a couple other answers, the possible answers. Actually, there's a whole page of possible answers. The root of the oak tree, how far? Oh, these are follow-up questions you might get from the master. Give a quote for this koan as a whole. The oak tree in the front garden. The answer is, horizontally it stretches across the 10 directions of space. Vertically it reaches to the 3 worlds of time. Okay, yeah, that's all crazy sounding and weird. And I've never worked with this kind of koan stuff. The idea that it is, what did that thing say? It is an anecdote or riddle used in Zen Buddhism to demonstrate the inadequacy of logical reasoning and to provoke enlightenment. There is a passage, and I spent 45 minutes or an hour this morning trying to find it, and I couldn't find it. But maybe somebody who's a better Dogen scholar than me can find it and tell me where it is. But there is a passage somewhere in Shobogenzo where Dogen goes on this kind of rant about how there's people in China these days who say that the koan stories are illogical and meant to provoke the brain to go beyond logic, but you guys just think they're illogical to you. They're perfectly logical. All right, I found the quote that I was looking for yesterday. My friend Rob has actually found it for me, and I'm going to read it to you. It's long. Here we go. "At the present time in the great kingdom of Sung, that's China, there is a group of unreliable fellows who have now formed such a crowd that they cannot be beaten by a few real people. They say that the present talk of the East Mountain moving on water," this is a koan that Dogen has just referred to, "and stories such as Nonsense Sickle," another koan you don't need to know, "are stories beyond rational understanding. Their idea is as follows. A story which involves images and thoughts is not a Zen story of the Buddhist patriarchs. Stories beyond rational understanding are the stories of Buddhist patriarchs. This is why we esteem Obaku, aka Huangpo's, use of the stick and Rinzai's shout, which are beyond rational understanding and which do not involve images and thoughts, as great realization before the sprouting of creation. The reason that the expedient means of many past masters employ tangle-cutting phrases is that those phrases are beyond rational understanding. That's him stating, that's Dogen stating what these guys say. Now he's going to tell us what he thinks. Those fellows who speak like this have never met a true teacher, and they have no eyes of learning in practice. They are small dogs who do not deserve to be discussed. For the last 200 or 300 years in the land of Sung, aka China, there have been many such demons and shavelings like those in the band of 6. You don't need to know, but some people who are misunderstood Buddhism in the past. It is pitiful that the great truth of the Buddhist patriarch is going to ruin. The understanding of these shavelings is inferior even to that of the Shorvakas of the small vehicle. They are more stupid than non-Buddhists. They are not lay people, they are not monks, they are not human beings, and they are not gods. They are more stupid than animals learning the Buddhist truth. What the shavelings call stories beyond rational understanding are beyond rational understanding only to them. The Buddhist patriarchs are not like that. Even though rational ways are not rationally understood by those shavelings, we should not fail to learn in practice the Buddhist patriarchs' ways of rational understanding. If ultimately there is no rational understanding, the reason which these shavelings have now set forth also cannot hit the target. There were many, he goes on and says, when I was in China, I laughed at them, the people who said this, but they had nothing to say for themselves, and they were just wordless. So that is the quote I was looking for, and it's from San Sui Gyo, the Sutra of Mountains and Waters. Okay, back to Brad in the other video. And this is what Nishijima Roshi used to say about the koans. He would say that they demonstrate a different type of logic. They're not illogical. They're not meant to make you go beyond logic or to get out of rational thinking and whatever. They are actually have a logic of their own that you can understand if you continually practice Zazen and work on it. You can understand them. So it's not... There's a kind of popular misunderstanding that koans are not used in Soto style Zen. That's completely untrue. Koans are often used, in fact constantly used, in Soto style Zen. They just aren't assigned to people as a thing to concentrate on during Zazen. Now, Daido Lori also wrote an introduction to Dogen's extensive record, which is over there, and I'm not going to go pick it up. Maybe I'll put it on the screen for you there. I forgot to bring it over to this side of the room. Anyway, he wrote an intro to this book, in which he tries to defend his use of this Rinzai style koan stuff in Soto Zen by picking out very obscure lines in Dogen and stuff like that. I just think he's grasping at straws, and just admit it. You're just doing Rinzai style koan study, which Dogen actually he several times in Shobo Genzo he goes on little rants against this guy named Dai. That's his Japanese pronunciation. I don't know his Chinese pronunciation, but he's the guy who's credited with coming up with this style of koan introspection, as they call it, where you work on the koan during Zazen and then you present your answer to the master. And Dogen goes on several rants where he says Dai was a dummy and didn't know anything about Zen, and we shouldn't listen to anything Dai said. So he doesn't specifically say you shouldn't do koan introspection in the Rinzai style, but he does go on. I think I found, when I was looking for that quote that I told you about, where Dogen talks about how koans aren't illogical, they have their own logic. Anyway, I found like 10 different rants, I don't know if it's 10, maybe 5 or 10 different rants, where Dogen goes on about how dumb Dai is, and you shouldn't follow the words of Dai. And by the way, Dai is the company that came up with Gamera, the giant turtle monster, but it's spelled differently. But anyway, it's pronounced more or less the same. Dai would be the master, and Dai, see, you can't tell the difference, would be the company that came up with Gamera. So that's pretty much it. I've never done koan introspection in the Rinzai style. One of the people who asked me about this he said he didn't have a teacher, and he wondered if it was good to try to do koan study alone. And I told him no, I think that's a bad idea. One of the things about koan introspection it tends to it can make people a little crazy because you are trying to work out something that sounds illogical and trying to make it logical, and you can kind of flip out. I remember one a teacher that I met years ago who told me about, she had been in this was a Zen teacher, she'd been in Japan doing something, some kind of Zen study, and she met somebody who had actually kind of gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs from doing koan study. She'd kind of gotten a little bit crazy, and that was kind of a sad story. So I think it's not a good idea to try to solve a koan on your own, and not, probably for most people it wouldn't drive you crazy, but it probably wouldn't also bear any real fruit. You just get kind of in a weird mindset. And I think probably if you're going to do zazen by yourself, you're better off doing shikantaza, which is just sitting. You just sit there and you don't try to do anything. You just try to maintain the posture for the allotted time that you've set for yourself, 30 minutes or 25 minutes or 20 minutes or 10 minutes. There was one guy who asked me about doing zazen for 3 minutes, and I said, well, that's pretty short, but you could do it for 3 minutes if you want. If that's all you can handle, that's fine. But I would standard period of zazen in the Rinzai sect is usually 25 minutes, and standard period in Soto tends to be 30 or 40 minutes, depending on where you go. I did one Soto style retreat where they did zazen for 60 minutes, and I was like, whoa, that is long. But they only did that very early in the morning. They didn't do that for the regular sittings later in the day. Anyway, sorry for going on a little bit of a tangent. That's pretty much it. That's kind of the difference between Soto style koans and Rinzai style koans, and they're the same koans. I brought this down. The sort of classic collection is this one, which is two Zen classics, The Gateless Gate and Blue Cliff Record. Those are the ones used in the Rinzai sect, and they're kind of the standard ones. And as I said, Nishijima Roshi used Dogen's koan collection, Shinji Shobogenzo, which contains there's a lot of them that are the same. There's some that are in here that are not in the other one, and vice versa. So that's where you can find all the koans. And this was by a teacher I used to visit in Chicago, who was a Pure Land Buddhist teacher. And he wrote a book called Zen Koans. His name is Gyome M. Kubose. I think the only place you can get this is from his website. It says brightdawn.org. So maybe if you go to Bright Dawn, it's one word, brightdawn.org, like dawn early in the day. So there you go. That's it about koans, and I hope you enjoyed that. I am recording this on Monday. I tend to record these on Mondays lately because that's the day I feel best, because I'm still undergoing those medical treatments, and I've got another one coming up tomorrow, which may or may not be the last one, at least for now. I'm hoping it is the last one because I've had too many of these and they're not fun. So if you want to donate to me getting through all these medical treatments and everything else, you can go to the URL that you're about to see on the screen below, or you're about to hear if you're listening to the audio version, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is where you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts, and those are my main and actually really these days my only way of making a living. So I appreciate your support, but as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. Also, for those of you who are worried about this, I had a guy fix it up so that site is now secure. It was always secure, but I didn't have the certificate to prove it. So now I got the certificate, so now it's fine. Anyway, it never was a problem. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye.
Hey Ziggy, I always get shots of you sleeping. I need to shoot you doing something more fun. But he tends to sleep while I do these videos. There he is. There's Ziggy. See you Ziggy later. Bye.